Imagine towering stone walls, grand and imposing, symbols of power that pierce the winter sky. You picture roaring hearths, bountiful feasts, and brave knights cloaked in warmth. It's a scene ripped straight from storybooks, isn't it? But what if I told you that idyllic image is a cruel deception? The reality of winter inside a medieval stronghold was a nightmare of cold, disease, and desperation. Far from a cozy haven, these majestic structures transformed into colossal stone refrigerators, traps designed by their very nature to amplify human suffering when the snow began to fall. Get ready to shed your romantic notions, because today we're plunging into the untold, brutal truth of what it really meant to survive a medieval winter. We'll expose the shocking facts history often overlooks: how ice formed inside noble chambers, how hunger twisted the minds of even the elite, and the omnipresent diseases that stalked every soul within those chilling walls. This isn't just a story. It's a chilling journey into a past where comfort was a myth and every single day was a battle for existence. Are you prepared to face the cold, hard truth? Let's begin.
Your modern home, with its insulation and central heating, offers a shield against winter's bite. Now, strip all that away. Medieval castles were built for defense, not thermal efficiency. Their massive, uninsulated stone walls, designed to withstand siege engines, acted as colossal heat sinks. They absorbed the exterior cold, radiating it inward, turning every chamber into an icy cavern. High, draft-stack ceilings allowed any meager warmth to escape, while countless gaps and cracks in the ancient masonry invited frost and biting winds directly into living spaces. Forget cozy, think frozen. Picture your breath fogging in your own bedchamber, ice crystals forming on window ledges, or water freezing in a pitcher left bedside. This wasn't a rare occurrence, it was the daily normal. The very architecture that protected them from enemies condemned them to an unending battle against the elements, making survival a test of pure, unyielding will. In winter, fresh provisions vanished almost overnight. The diet shifted to a monotonous, nutrient-deficient regimen of preserved goods. Think tough, incredibly salty meats, demanding hours of soaking to become merely edible. Dried fish, shriveled vegetables, and ancient grains constituted the bulk of meals, stored in barrels and sacks. Imagine enduring weeks, months even, on this bland, repetitive fare, utterly devoid of the freshness our bodies crave. This wasn't just unpleasant, it was a health catastrophe.
Vitamin deficiencies, especially the life-sustaining vitamin C, were rampant. Scurvy wasn't a rare sailor's malady, it was an endemic plague within castle walls, gnawing at the gums, loosening teeth, draining energy, and causing internal bleeding. It weakened every inhabitant, from the lowliest servant to the High Lord, rendering them vulnerable to every passing illness. Chronic malnutrition was the invisible enemy, particularly during prolonged sieges or lean harvest years when grain was literally worth its weight in silver. Food was a survival mechanism, not a source of pleasure. Its flavor was secondary to its calorie count, variety an unthinkable luxury. Even staple vegetables like cabbage and turnips were consumed dried or fermented, retaining only a fraction of their original vitamins. Fruit, a fleeting, precious memory. Salt, while essential for preservation, was consumed in quantities that stressed organs and led to chronic dehydration. In these conditions, life was an exercise in pure, grinding endurance. Modern castles lack modern waterproofing. The ancient stone walls, porous and unsealed, perpetually soaked up moisture from autumn rains and melting winter snow. This dampness didn't just linger, it penetrated deep into the masonry, turning the very fabric of the castle into an icy sponge. Water trapped within the stone froze, expanded, and slowly, relentlessly tore the walls apart from the inside, creating fissures that let in even more cold. Inside, moisture from human breath and cooking condensed on every frigid surface, manifesting as icy growths on ceilings and walls, or weeping rivulets forming puddles on the stone floors.
This perpetual dampness and lack of airflow cultivated the perfect breeding ground for mold and mildew. Not only did these insidious fungi ruin tapestries, rot clothing, and degrade property, but they silently released toxins into the stagnant air. From persistent coughs to debilitating bronchitis, pneumonia, and even tuberculosis, the castle's crying walls literally bled moisture and cold, making every breath a potential health hazard. Fabric never truly dried, carrying a perpetual musty scent. Wood warped and rotted, even metal weapons rusted, demanding constant maintenance. There was no escape. The very environment designed for protection incubated illness. Imagine a persistent, pervasive stink, a multi-layered assault on your senses that never truly dissipates. Welcome to a medieval castle in winter. Windows were sealed tight to trap any precious heat, creating stagnant, suffocating air. The close quarters, coupled with primitive or utterly non-existent waste disposal, generated an unimaginable miasma. Castle moats, often serving as open sewers, would freeze solid, only to thaw with agonizing slowness, releasing an unbearable stench that permeated the surrounding landscape for hundreds of feet.
Inside, the acrid smoke from inefficient hearths, lacking proper chimneys, mingled with the potent aroma of unwashed bodies, animal excrement, rotting food scraps, moldy fabrics, and damp, musty stone. This fragrant cocktail clung to everything: clothes, furniture, hair, skin. While medieval folk had a far higher tolerance for foul odors than us, this relentless assault certainly impacted their health, mood, and appetite. Latrines were often crude chutes directly emptying into the moat, or worse, overflowing pits. Portable chamber pots, the contents of which were frequently flung from windows into the outer courtyard, added to the atmospheric pollution. Animals, dogs, cats, even pigs, often shared living spaces, contributing their own potent aromas and bodily fluids. Without regular cleaning or disinfection, the ammonia from urine and decaying organic matter became overwhelming. Food spoils quickly without refrigeration, attracting vermin and compounding the unsanitary nightmare. This constant exposure to repulsive odors didn't just cause headaches and nausea, it fostered a breeding ground for bacteria and viruses, making disease spread inevitable. If you were a noble, you might have had a rudimentary bed with a canopy, offering a fragile illusion of warmth. But for the vast majority of castle inhabitants, squires, maids, soldiers, cooks, sleep was a brutal, interrupted affair. They slept wherever they could, on frigid stone floors in drafty halls, wrapped in thin cloaks near communal fireplaces, in narrow windswept corridors, or on damp, parasite-infested straw pallets in common barracks. These sleeping areas were utterly exposed, often windowless or equipped with ill-fitting shutters that offered scant protection from the elements.
Imagine lying on a cold stone floor after a grueling day, shivering uncontrollably. The air is thick with the scent of smoke and unwashed bodies. Rats rustle and squeak in the shadows, sometimes even scampering over sleeping forms. You sleep fully clothed, a desperate attempt to retain body heat, yet those clothes are already soiled with the day's sweat and grime, worsening hygiene and inviting skin ailments. Bathing was a rare luxury, especially in winter. The straw bedding, a breeding ground for fleas, lice, and bedbugs, provided a constant, unbearable itch. Each bite inflamed the skin and transmitted disease. This chronic lack of restful sleep led to constant fatigue, dulled reactions, and a weakened immune system, making servants prime targets for the infections that thrived in the castle's festering environment. Even a common cold could turn fatal, as bodies were too exhausted to fight. Recovery was a distant dream, often leading to disability or death. In the relentless grip of winter, desperate times called for desperate measures. It wasn't uncommon for people to share their beds, or at least their hearth space, with animals. Dogs, cats, even small weasels kept for vermin control often became bedfellows. This wasn't primarily a sentimental choice, it was a pragmatic necessity. Animals, warm-blooded creatures like us, provided precious body heat, acting as living hot water bottles in frigid beds where breath steamed in the air. Large hounds often slept at their owners' feet, offering an extra layer of warmth and a sense of security.
The benefit was undeniable, a degree of warmth that could stave off hypothermia, aid sleep, and provide a modicum of comfort. Dogs served as early warning systems against intruders, while cats were invaluable rodent destroyers, protecting vital food stores and combating plague-carrying vermin. However, this close proximity came at a steep cost. Animal hygiene was virtually non-existent. These creatures were rarely washed or treated for parasites. Fleas, ticks, and lice easily migrated from animal fur to human skin, causing unbearable itching, rashes, and transmitting diseases like typhus. The pervasive smell of damp fur, animal waste, and secretions added another layer to the castle's already potent stench. Yet, in those stark conditions, the warmth and utility of these animal companions often outweighed the significant health and sanitation drawbacks. Pragmatism, as ever, trumped aesthetics. Despite their stone construction, medieval castles were constant fire hazards. Think of the main combustible materials: massive wooden beams, floors, furniture, straw bedding, tapestries, clothing, stored grains. All were perfectly dried fuel. Open torches and candles, the sole source of light during long, dark winter evenings, posed an enormous risk. A dropped torch, a stray spark from a fireplace, or an unattended candle could ignite disaster in an instant. Smoke, thick and suffocating, rapidly filled the castle's confined spaces, causing panic, disorientation, and quick asphyxiation.
Water for firefighting was catastrophically scarce, especially in winter when wells and cisterns often froze solid. A castle, designed as an impregnable fortress, could transform into a deadly inferno with no escape. Even if you managed to evade the flames, fleeing into the sub-zero night in your nightclothes was often a death sentence by hypothermia. Many died not from burns, but from freezing to death outside. Wooden staircases and floors acted as perfect conduits, allowing fire to rage swiftly between levels. Furniture, chests of belongings, food stores, all became fuel. Even seemingly robust wool tapestries, when dry, could ignite with alarming speed. Carbon monoxide from the smoke caused rapid loss of consciousness, trapping people in the maze of corridors. The limited water supply was barely enough for drinking, let alone extinguishing a major blaze. A winter castle fire wasn't just a threat to property, it was a near-guaranteed mass fatality event. Imagine waking to the crunch of ice underfoot inside your home. Medieval castles, with their porous stone and myriad cracks, were susceptible to water infiltration from melting snow and rain. This water, seeping through roofs and walls, didn't just create dampness, it froze. Icicles didn't just hang outside, they formed within the castle, along windowsills, on internal walls, and even on furniture, transforming objects into macabre ice sculptures. Floors became slick and treacherous with meltwater and ice, turning every step into a calculated risk.
The constant presence of internal ice and water reinforced the biting cold and pervasive dampness, a chill that could not be escaped day or night. More alarmingly, it posed a severe risk of falls and injuries, particularly in dimly lit corridors and unheated stairwells. A careless step could easily result in a fractured bone, a dislocation, or a concussion. For a medieval person, far removed from modern medicine, even a simple fracture could lead to lifelong disability or death from infection. Wooden floors rotted from the perpetual humidity, while stone floors remained dangerously slick. Poor lighting from flickering torches only compounded the danger. Beyond physical harm, the constant dampness meant clothes never dried, furniture warped, and precious manuscripts molded and decayed, erasing knowledge. ice and water within the castle were a stark daily reminder of humanity's vulnerability against the raw, unyielding power of winter. When winter descended, the castle transformed into an isolated prison. Roads vanished under deep snow and ice, rivers froze, cutting off communication and travel. Life ground to an agonizing crawl. Summer activities, hunting, outdoor training, tournaments, became impossible. People were confined to stuffy, poorly lit and relentlessly cold rooms, forced into close proximity for months on end. This lack of variety, the primitive entertainment, and the constant bone-numbing cold, intensified by the encroaching darkness, bred a profound sense of boredom, despondency, and depression.
Tensions flared. Quarrels, arguments, and even violent fights became common in these cramped, high-stress environments. The rigid social hierarchy, perhaps more flexible in warmer months, became painfully obvious in winter, amplifying discontent between lord and servant. Chronic malnutrition and vitamin deficiencies further eroded mental well-being, leading to apathy, irritability, and in severe cases, even hallucinations. The absence of fresh air, sunlight, and a change of scenery only amplified negative emotions. This wasn't merely mild discomfort, it was a serious psychological trial. Long, dark, freezing days and nights, devoid of stimulation, deepened anxieties and fears. In a world where basic survival was a daily struggle, this added mental burden became almost unbearable. The crushing weight of isolation and the endless wait for spring was a heavy psychological toll on every soul within the castle walls. Medieval clothing, though layered, was a far cry from modern thermal wear. Coarse wool and linen offered inadequate protection against biting winds and struggled to retain body heat. Furs, a luxury for the nobility, were heavy, restrictive, absorbed moisture poorly, and harbored parasites. The bulky layers, while numerous, impeded movement, making daily tasks even more arduous. Inner layers quickly absorbed sweat, then became cold and damp, especially during any physical exertion. Drying clothes was an epic challenge in the perpetually damp castle, so many wore wet garments for days, drastically increasing the risk of colds, pneumonia, and frostbite. Constant chills were the norm.
Basic linen and cotton undergarments provided almost no insulation and soaked through easily. Practical, effective dyes were rare, contributing to a dull, drab palette that only intensified the gloomy atmosphere. Washing clothes was an infrequent event, particularly in winter, leading to an accumulation of dirt, sweat, and grease that further diminished the fabric's insulating properties. Footwear was equally impractical. Simple leather shoes or boots, often unlined and not waterproof. Feet were perpetually cold and wet, leading to frostbite and trench foot, a painful condition from prolonged exposure to cold dampness. Hats and gloves were rare for common folk, and even when present, offered minimal protection. Exposed skin quickly froze, leading to frostbite on ears, noses, and fingers, even in relatively mild freezes when combined with wind. Such primitive clothing was more than uncomfortable. It was a constant threat to health and life, making inhabitants profoundly vulnerable to the elements and rampant disease. Procuring fuel in a medieval winter was a grueling, dangerous, and ceaseless task. As local forests were quickly depleted, woodcutters had to venture miles further, deeper into wild, perilous lands, exposing them to attacks from bandits or wild animals. Each trip for firewood became a perilous expedition, demanding careful planning and courage. Hauling heavy bundles of wood back to the castle was an agonizing ordeal, especially through deep snow and over treacherous ice, where every step was a challenge. Sleds and carts, if available, eased the burden, but often the wood had to be carried by sheer human strength, requiring Herculean endurance.
Coal was a rare, expensive commodity, limited to specific regions and nearly impossible to transport long distances, rendering it inaccessible to most. Fuel was literally worth its weight in gold. Every scrap of wood was hoarded. Even in wealthy castles, constant heating was an impossible luxury. Fires were often lit only in the Great Hall for specific hours, usually in the evening. Everyone, from the High Lord to the lowest servant, gathered there,
Torn by the primal need for warmth, this communal gathering, a desperate shared ritual for survival, blurred status distinctions for a precious few hours. But the constant shortage bred conflict. Theft of firewood in severe winters could mean the difference between life and death. The unending struggle for fuel cultivated a unique mentality, where thrift, cunning, and an almost obsessive prudence became vital for survival. The medieval castle in winter was not the romantic stronghold of legend. It was a crucible of hardship, a profound test of human resilience. Stone, far from being a protector, became an enemy, radiating cold. Smoke was an inescapable companion, and drafts a constant threat. People survived not because of their magnificent architecture, but despite it, relying on layers of rough clothing, incredible mental fortitude, rudimentary but life-saving methods of battling the cold, and often sheer luck. A reverie of a winter in a medieval fortress isn't a quaint tale of forgotten days. It's a stark, unvarnished truth about human endurance and our astounding capacity to adapt to the most brutal conditions imaginable. It's a powerful, sobering reminder of how far we've come in creating the comforts we now take for granted, and how truly valuable the warmth and security of our modern homes truly are. The next time you feel a chill, remember those who came before us, huddled in their stone refrigerators, fighting tooth and nail for every breath, every degree of warmth.